All right, everybody, welcome back to RCT Creations for another RCT Construction episode. We are, as you can see, at Houston Pleasant um, for the 2010 season. We are heading into 2010 right now. As you can see down here in the bottom corner is March year one, which actually would be, so it's March year one, but it actually would be March of 2010 as well, because the park does not open until March, I should say. Um, with this park being closed January and February. We're heading into the 2010 season. Actually, upon working on this, I'm still working on the script for the Fun Corporation breakdown of the 2000s. So we're going to have a little bit of fun kind of watching a ride that was not around for the 2000s, kind of be in the background because I haven't shot the B-roll for that video yet. But we're going to go ahead and work our way over to the eastern corner of the park here. And we are going to be working on building a B&M Hyper Roller Coaster. This ride will go by the name Trailblazer, and I kind of have an idea for a theme already for it. So this one, kind of less teasery than Kingman's Grave was, but even still, with that ride, I really wasn't that teasery about it, if you really ask me. So we're going to want to put this at about 35 feet. Let's see if I got it right the first time. I did. Let's go. So we're going to start with a 7-tile station because we are using these staggered seating trains for this one. So the staggered seating trains in real life were only used 4 times for B&M Hypercoasters. The first being Behemoth at Canada's Wonderland in 2008. Diamondback at Kings Island followed up in 2009. 2010 saw Intimidator, now Thunderstriker at Carowinds use these trains, and the final time we have seen those to this point would be on Shambhala at Port Ventura in 2012. Now, as far as I'm aware, these are still in circulation. However, heading into 2010, these were still very prime for use. So we're going to go ahead and use those trains because I really like the look of them. And if you've ridden a coaster with these staggered seating trains, something they do really, really well is if you sit in the front or back of these trains. Sorry, my computer keyboard is at uneven ground right now, so it kind of wobbles back and forth. But anyway, if you've ridden a coaster with these style trains, you know they tend to like shove the front over the back, and they really drag the back rows over the airtime hill, so you get really, really good airtime in the front or back. Middle is just kind of, it's just kind of there. Those seats exist. However, the front and back are really where you get the primary airtime. So as usual with these builds now, I have this pre-built in a design world, which what I do for my design world is I copy the save and then build the layout to where I would like it, to where I like it. And then I transfer that over, so the layout is already finalized. But we are going to copy it over to the actual park now. So if you look at this build, you notice I'm using these booster sections. So I kind of use them as a dual purpose, especially for these modern rides. We're kind of getting into the modern era, which is both exciting and not exciting at the same time, because as you guys saw with Kingman's Grave, a lot of custom support work with that ride, and believe it or not, this one's going to have the same kind of conundrum for me, because I'm very impatient when it comes to building custom supports. However, I do think they tend to look better, and you can't really use the in-game supports anymore. I think if you're building like the Aero coasters, the Togos, you can kind of get away with using those. However, when you get to the modern era, you kind of have to get a little more creative because the support structures are way different. And let me tell you, when we get to building Intamin coasters, I'm really not looking forward to that, because Intamin support structures are just kind of crazy out of this world. So anyway, we're going to start with the final brake run, then we'll get into the main layout. If you look at the ground, I have like the dirt spots marked. That is actually where the footers for the custom supports are going to go. So that is why those look like that. So copying over the brake run. With these staggered seating hypers, you have a few friction brakes. However, primarily what's used to stop and slow the trains down at this point are B&M's mag brakes. So that is the primary focus here in slowing these trains down. So what we're going to do, we have these booster sections. So what I will do to kind of copy these, and you've seen them before if you've watched my channel in the past and prior to the Fun Corp series. And the Fun Corp series is really kind of taken up literally all my time when it comes to this game. But World of Remnant, I used some of the mag brakes when I built some of the modern coasters. The only park I believe I've built in the meantime is actually going to be Quarry Park. Everything outside of that has been Fun Corp. which, I mean, I'm not complaining about because this has been a really fun series to watch build, and I hope you guys have enjoyed watching it. But so we're using these boosters down here as kind of the drive tires, and the same thing for the departing of the station. So those are your drive tires, and then these are going to be your mag brakes. So they are the same sprite and they look the exact same. However, they both are going to serve different purposes when it comes to this. So what I'm going to get started on right away, as I mentioned, is the transfer track. And I have not done any work for the station for this ride yet. And if you notice, it's really placed far off the path here. So we have the station all the way over here, and then your path is over here. So the idea, I think, is going to be to kind of use this maintenance pathway and maybe have the road kind of jut out this way. And I got the idea to kind of do like kind of like thinking West Coast Racers at Six Flags Magic Mountain a little bit, where you're going to do like an auto body shop, and that's going to be kind of where you get your main theme for this particular ride from. But we'll go ahead and get started by getting the tile places, or the kind of brake run support structure in here. This is where your transfer track is going to be. Going to require 7 tiles. However, with this, because of the way this works, I don't want to have the railings go off, so we'll leave it at the same height. And just like with Kingman's Grave, we'll leave them just a little bit short. But in the end, it will make sure those all line up. I don't want to put anything under this yet, because if you put the brace piece there to make it look, and then you put a custom support behind it, it will delete that, so we'll kind of leave that barren for now. Moving on into the transfer tracks, I won't detail the station, but I probably will detail the transfer track here as one of the first bits. And actually what I want to do here is put the station piece. And then I just want to make sure I have 7 right. So the block break here is going to be where the transfer track starts. I just want to make sure I have 7. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yeah, it's perfect. So our station platform is there. That will line up our transfer track perfectly. And then what I'll do is I'll use just plain walls as kind of the slide piece. There's some creators that will use RMC single rail track, which I think looks good, but I don't like to clutter up the ride interface with too much, so that's why I typically will go for this. But again, it looks really good when you do it the other way as well. On these transfer tracks, I am going to put boosters just so we have drives to potentially push the train off. 7, and then there is our first transfer track, and I'm going to match the color to the ride itself. Now, what you could do with the B&M transfer tracks, if you do end up doing this, is most transfer tracks from B&M are actually just going to be gray, like literally completely gray. However, I am going to give a little more color. And again, I talked about this in the Kingman's Grave build. However, with these B&M transfers, typically what you'll see is the track doesn't exist, like the rail doesn't exist. What you'll have where like the box spine is, you'll have these individual wheels, and there's a ton of them just lined up, so it rests kind of on where the drive tires catch the train, so that the wheels aren't rested. So the wheels aren't resting on a running wheel to create flat spots or anything like that. It's actually really ingenious. And Rapterra at King's Dominion even takes it a step further, and like there's wheels on the side of the wing cars that the train rests on, which is just absolutely genius. So again, we're going to do this. We're going to have our booster, which is going to serve as our drive tire. Won't actually do anything, but just for looks. And then I am going to color these to match the ride track, just so it doesn't look too boring. And then once this is done, I'm going to go ahead and get in my train colors, so you kind of get an idea of what the trains for this ride will look like. And then for this ride, we're going to do kind of the staggered transfer track for B&M. Some of them will have all 3 right next to each other. Diamondback is the only staggered seating hyper that has all 3 next to each other, which is kind of interesting. Behemoth and Intimidator have a set of 2 next to each other, and then 1 extra on the far side, which is the order I'm going to go with for this one. So now train color for this ride. So this is going to be transfer 1. Right here, and I apologize if you hear my keyboard flapping back and forth. Whoops, if I can spell right. And then behind that, you have transfer 2. I cannot spell. There we go. And then we'll have transfer 3 right here. And that one I got right the first time. How about that? So train 3 on this ride is going to be the dark red. And then we're going to have black be the second. So the chassis is kind of that black color, or the seats are that black color. And then the restraints, the clamshells, are going to be orange. That's typically what I seem to find is the most common clamshell color, but it also could just be my... the first B&M Hyper I rode was Diamondback, and its clamshells are orange, so that's probably realistically where I get that from. I know the one Raging Bull at Great America has 3 separate colors for the clamshells. But yeah, that's probably what I'll stick with here. So there's our 3 trains. Make sure they're all right. And we just got to get that back. And then also what I'm going to do is just make the transfers all functional right now. And by functional, I mean they can store trains. Does it actually work in game? No, but I think at the end of the day, it does look pretty good. So all those are set properly. Get these down to 1 train apiece. Just like that. And then I want to unlock operating modes. Is it? I don't think it's... There it is. Show operating modes. And then we're going to go to reverse incline shuttle mode. And then what I also typically will do with this is I'll put on wait for full load just in case I accidentally open these rides, so we don't actually accidentally dispatch. Then we'll also set the inspection time on the transfer tracks to never. So there's your transfer tracks. So now what I have to do is build the entrance and exits, which I will typically stagger over each other. So we'll do those there. And then for transfer 2, we'll put them there as well. And then transfer 1, I'll just stack those. Oh, whoops, not transfer 1, I need transfer 3. Which I realize I have not colored yet. There you go. And then we'll put the entrance and exit for transfer 1, just like that. And then as a final... Well, not the final checkbox, but we'll make sure the entrances are invisible. And then finally, what we will do is use the tile inspector to make that invisible, and then we'll copy this track piece here, and we'll do that for all 3. So for this, we want that track piece to be invisible, and then we want to copy the track piece to the front so that the transfer tracks look more like that. Now they just look very plain, and on the place where your trains will be stored. Then we'll go ahead and get the floor together underneath, and then typically what you see from these kind of transfer tracks is they typically do have more of a lattice structure underneath. So I think that's what we're going to go ahead and roll with. And I think what I'll do as well is on the far side. No, I don't think I will do that, actually. I think we'll keep it the way it is. And under here, we'll do the transfer pieces. Or the slide support structure, like that. Then we'll stack that up. Like so. And then on top of that, we'll have these pieces. So the support structure looks a little bit different heading into the transfer track, and I'm actually short one. It's throwing me off because I don't typically build transfer tracks that are 7 tiles long. The staggered seating B&M trains are very, very, very long. Which again, when you're going over those airtime hills is actually pretty awesome, but when it comes, it's just throwing me off a little bit when building the transfer track. So there's your transfer. You have kind of your support structure for the shed itself. And then we'll add a little bit more to the end here on the back. So there are your transfer tracks. And then as far as cover for these goes, they are, again, very, very basic. If you look at the Diamondback transfer tracks or any B&M transfer tracks from the Dick Kinsel Cedar Fair era, they're all very, very plain. There's not much to them. In fact, I'm probably just going to keep it as plain as I possibly can. So we'll do one piece here. And it's going to take a little bit of fluffing because of the way the stations are built together here with the entrances and exits. So we'll do that just like so. And we'll leave the back kind of open because you want to be able to get the trains over there onto the transfers somehow. So actually I'll probably leave transfer 3s back open here so you have the ability to lift the train up into this one. And then you just have to transfer them over to the other sets of transfer here. So I might actually add one more piece to the back of this one. And then move the support structure back a little bit. So just like that. And now when it comes to decorating the transfer track, I'm going to use, again, very, very basic materials. Nothing absolutely crazy. And it's going to be a little difficult on this side just because we're going to have some more support structure. So I'll probably stop there for the time being. Maybe we'll go one more. No, I think we'll stop there for the time being. Because you can't really see it on that side anyway, and plus I want to do custom supports over here anyway, so that'll work just fine for the time being. And then I gotta go with a little bit of disable clearance checks again to kind of block off where the station pieces are. And then on this side I actually can do that just because we can hide it. With clearance checks disabled, we can hide inside the structure a little bit, and I think I will just put that piece there for the time being. Will it stick? Probably not, but you just never know. And as far as supports for this section go, they're going to be pretty typical for what B&M has been using. So we'll go with the same basic support structure. So we have 2 there, and I just kind of want to make sure I line these up properly so it's not crazy. So we'll go with that for now, and then we can do kind of individual supports here heading up to the transfer track, which actually lines up about perfect, all things considered. So enjoy it while you can. You're getting RCT Creations doing custom supports with a live comm, and that is something that's going to be increasingly rare. And I will be completely honest with you when I say that, because doing custom supports is not my favorite thing, as I have mentioned before. So we're going to do those, and then that's the final one. And we'll do that. And we'll do that. Just so they all kind of line up. Then as far as color goes, we're going to do that same orange, except the connection piece is going to be gray. So it looks like it connects. Oops. And these are all going to be the exact same, like so. And then these are going to have actually a little bit of a diagonal support on them as well. Then when it comes to lining them up, literally what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this piece to each of these. That way I know exactly where this connector needs to line up. Just like that. And then beyond that, we can just go straight up until we connect with the transfer. And then these will just be vertical members. And as I mentioned, it is going to cause a little bit of consternation over there, but that's not a big deal. And then also what I'll do is I'll put some support blockers on there and just kind of use the optical illusion that the supports are connected. And we'll get the kind of angled pieces here just to make it look like it's a continuous piece. And then as far as the trim, we're going to use this orange color, like so. And now this is where it gets kind of difficult here because we got to get this lined up, which is going to involve, actually that shouldn't be too bad. This should go pretty much just straight into that transfer building, which will be about perfect actually. And then this trim is going to follow all the way along up to the station. And in fact, is even going to go out of the station as well. So we can connect that there. And then these will just leave pretty open. And in fact, I think I might just put gray on the front of that. Actually, I don't even think I'll put anything on that at all, just so it looks like that can slide in place. And then on the back of this, I will put a gray piece on. Just like that. So there's our transfer track. I think for the time being, let's go ahead and get working on this. So I'm going to need the tile inspector. Or hold on. Before we do that, let's do the railings on top, because we want railings to go up here. Oopsies. There we go. So we want railings on top, just so we get a little bit of alignment. And it doesn't look like guests will just fall straight off the side, or the maintenance techs will just walk off the side. We want a little bit of guardrail, just for a little bit of added realism. And the guardrail for the transfer is just going to go straight through. Just like that. Perfect. Because with a lot of these B&M transfer tracks, the control panel is actually on the transfer itself, which I think is kind of cool. I think the arrows used to do that as well, actually. Then we got that all lined up, and then just for a little bit of decoration, we'll get this redone as well, just so it doesn't look so sharp. There you go. And then underneath that, I actually do want to do dirt, just so it looks a little nicer. And then what I typically do for underneath the lattice structure is I'll just put kind of this mud color, just so it looks like there is something on top that might block the sun from reaching the grass underneath. So now I have to figure out what color trim is going to go underneath, and I think I might just end up doing yellow again, something like that. Which I think looks decent. But again, we got to figure out how we're going to get the line up. This should be okay, but I might need to disable clearance checks again to kind of get underneath. But I could also just have it end right there, because moving up against the transfer isn't always necessarily going to be perfect. Even in real life, it won't be perfect. So I think we'll just do this yellow and orange color all the way across. And I think for the transfer, I might just leave it out, and then it'll connect up to the station, just so that it looks like there's enough room for this to move. And there we go. So now I'll need a tile inspector. And a new trick I found out, you don't actually have to highlight the tile. You can just right click the piece you want to change. And that makes this whole scenario way easier than it used to be. Especially when building these hypercoaster lift hills, because that was not a fun task to select every single piece and have to line it up. So I think what I will do is I will go ahead and disable clearance checks. Oops, not support limits. Clearance checks, and we will lock in on a piece right here. So I'll put it there for now, just so I can select it with the tile inspector. Angle it, then drop it. And then what I would like to do is click this and just move it up so it shows over. Just like that. That's perfect. Now on the opposite side, we can pretty much just have it continue straight on. That is not what I wanted to do. Again, use the tile inspector, and this side is right side up. And this makes this whole process way easier. It's still tedious, and again, it'll be time-lapse when we do the lift hills, because the lift hill for a B&M hyper is going to be that much worse. And this isn't even going to be a huge B&M hyper. This one's going to be pretty much right on the line of 200 feet. Which is going to be a little bit of a trivia fact, and I'll tell you why in a upcoming RCT construction. But with the support being built there, we have to kind of replace some of those. But for the most part, that looks decent. And then what we'll do for our kind of B&M transfer structure here was put these tile pieces in. And again, it's going to require a little bit of clearance checks being played with to get it all lined up. Just like that. And we're going to do that all the way across, just like that. And again, roofs for this is going to be really straightforward. Just gray. Doesn't have to be anything horribly complex, because that is not the intention behind these transfers. And all of the transfers from this era kind of give this vibe. I'm going to use the tile inspector on that side a little bit more just to kind of get everything lined up where we want it to be. So I want to select that railing there, and we actually want that to be above if we can. That doesn't look like it's going to matter. No matter what we do. A little unfortunate, but what also, I guess what else I can do, potentially, because this is looking a little bit crowded, we can delete that railing. And unfortunately, this might get in a little bit just like that. Okay. So I think that's what we'll do. We'll go ahead and get rid of just some of that extra fluff over there. We get a little bit of a better view here. And then potentially what I can do is just have that stop right there. So it looks more like it's just connected to the transfer track, which will be kind of blocked by a roof, so that shouldn't be too big a deal. And there we go. And then just a little bit more texture on it. I think I will make this yellow, just to give it a little bit of detail. Not a lot, just a little bit. And there we go. And then that will lead us into our roof, which will just be gray and very, very standard. Again, doesn't have to be crazy. It can be very, very plain, especially for these 2000s era, these early 2010s B&M hypers. I mean, everything about them was pretty plain. So there you go. There's our transfer track. As much as I'd like to have an extra railing here, I think that'll work, at least for now. I do see we get lost one of those pieces, so we'll fix that real quick. And I think I might try to stick that railing back in there. Just to kind of give the illusion that it comes down. And even we can do that. Let's do that. Select that railing, right side, and just drop it twice. So it's going to have a little bit of an angle on it, but that's fine. It will level it out, and it just kind of disappears in there, which I think is fine. Even actually what I might do is actually have it on the outside, so it lines up with these railings. And sometimes you can get it to appear below stuff, but it doesn't look like that's going to be in the cards here. So I think I had it good the first time, so let's go ahead and get rid of those, and we'll move them back on the inside. Oopsies. I think we'll go with that. That'll be fine. So there it lines up with the transfer tracks there, and now what we can do is just do a little bit of a test and make sure all the trains fit. And they do. And then we'll just see through scenery real quick, make sure they're not too close, but that looks literally about perfect. A little bit of space between these trains, and it is a little bit cramped, but that is perfectly fine. That's kind of what you want with these transfer tracks. So there we go. So now we can go ahead and get kicked off on the actual lift hill itself. In fact, I might build the last little bit of the ride. Hey, you know what? No, we'll leave it the way it is for now. We've got all the detail work in we want, at least at this point. Okay, so heading into our lift hill here, I'm going to do a little bit different. So if you're familiar with my previous build of my B&M coaster, so now we have this booster heading into the lift hill. However, what we don't want is to set it to 9 because it's going to pick up too much speed and kind of launch into the lift, which isn't what you want. We're going to leave it at 4. And what we're going to do And this is kind of a, I don't know if it's a glitch with the game, but what happens, at least in my testing, is what I find, is you can go ahead and set the lift. Actually, real quick, I'm going to set the trains in, and I'm going to give them their color. And actually, I only want one for now. So this one's going to be red with the black seats with the orange clamshells. Anyway, we're going to set our lift hill speed. So for this one, I originally went 6 miles an hour, but it just seemed really, really slow to the point where you couldn't even roll trains. We're going to set it to 7 miles an hour. We're going to do one chain lift piece. And if you're familiar with my previous B&M build, you'll know that I typically will set the chain lift here, again, just to kind of act as the drive tires. And I'll throw an image up on screen right now. With B&M coasters, they have drive tires set in front. And this is just the epitome of how well built these rides, I can't really say are anymore because they've been having issues in recent years, but previously you'd set the drive tires, they would push the train into the lift at the speed the lift was set to when it catches the train, so it leads to less wear and tear on the train and the components and the actual lift itself. So typically what I'll do is I'll do one here, then the space, and then we'll start the lift. If you look at, I'll go to the other side of the park actually with Xenon TLS, and that's what we did here. And this is kind of an example of an older school B&M because the lift hill started at the angle it was going to ascend at. However, with the B&M Hypers and kind of heading into the 2010s, we're going to do a space and we're going to start the lift angling up. And now I'll go ahead and throw up an image of one of the 3 Cedar Fair staggered seating Hypers, but this is how the lift hills start. And in the future, it's going to get even better for B&M because they're going to actually set the lift hills to go a little bit and then angle up, so it has plenty of time to catch up and it can even catch before it angles. But we're going to start right here. So there we go. And now what we're going to do, we're going to head on up to 215 feet in height. So a lot of clicks here. And then 215 is going to be our max height here. So with that, if we go ahead and throw height marks on land, you'll see the land is at 15. We are at a perfect 200 feet tall. Originally, this ride was going to be bigger. However, with the land over here, I ended up kind of running out of space. I could have continued to go up. I didn't want to angle straight into a turn, and the way the layout ended up working, it fits really well with Houston Comet. So we're going to leave it where it is. Another thing I see from a lot of builds for B&M Hypers is builders will just go straight into a big down drop like this. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I think there's some rides where you can see it does that, the arrows a little bit. But when it comes to the arrows and the Morgans, I typically will do 2 down spaces to end the lift. For the B&M Hypers, I will literally just go straight into the drop just like that. And I think that looks good. At least for my builds. We're going to go down here, and I'm going to do exactly what I did for Xenon TLS, which is 3 spaces for the valley. It could, in theory, be more, but I think it just looks a little weird with the geometry of the game. And our second hill is going to go up to 170. And it actually will go perfectly over the top of the log flume here. And again, all of these little dirt plots right here are just where I marked. Those are tiles where the custom support footers are going to end up. Then we're going to go back down, not all the way to the ground. We're going to go down to about 15 feet again. So I guess the same spot, but the land goes down a little bit. We'll do the same valley. And this is something that's going to be a little bit unique. And I went back and forth on this element, but I thought it ended up being unique enough that I wanted to keep it. So we're going to go up to 150. We're going to do a turn just like that. So you're going to be up in the air a little bit, and then we're going to drop back down. And then this hill is going to go down to, again, 15 feet. And then we're going to go into a high-speed turn. So we're going to do 1, start to bank, give an extra space, bank, and go into the turn, then an extra space again, and then 1, just to kind of give that turn a little bit of a feeling that it's a little bit wider. And now we're going to go up into our second full airtime hill and third hill total. This one will go to 130. And then we're going to go down here. And this is the first time where we're going to go below 15. So we're going to go all the way down to -5. And then we end up in this little trench here, which I think ends up looking pretty sweet. And then we're going to angle back up. I want to make sure I have it right. So this is the spot where we're going to angle back up. And we're going to go to a height of 50 feet. We're going to start our bank 1 tile long. And then our turn's going to go up to 75. And then we're going to angle back into kind of a hammerhead turn. So this looks kind of like the turn that Behemoth at Canada's Wonderland does, or the turnaround on Intimidator, now Thunderstriker at Carowinds is kind of like this. Diamondbacks kind of goes out, angles over, and comes back, so it's right aligned with itself, but we're going to keep it where it is due to in-game limitations. That was my original idea, but if you try to do this again, you're going to end up literally on the exact same plot, and you don't necessarily want that. So we're going to go back down, and now we're going to come back down to 5 in height. Now what's going to happen right here, and with every single B&M Hyper, every single one has a trim brake on it somewhere. So we're going to put a brake here. We're going to set it to 67, and the train actually is not going up to that speed. So it won't actually hit anything, but it is there just for looks. Now we're going to head into our third airtime hill, which goes up to 100 feet. And the thing I really like about the way this layout ended up working out, we have a height of 130 feet for this airtime hill, which is the third hill of the ride, which is actually shorter than Houston Comet. So Houston Comet doesn't necessarily look dwarfed in comparison if you're looking from the path here. So this ride kind of ends up hidden behind it. We're going to come back down, and this is where our on-ride photo is going to be. So just like that. And now we're going to go into a less steep hill. We're going to go up to 75. Start our bank, and then a turn at 80 feet. We're going to level out, and then with the new pieces, we can go to a diagonal, horizontal to steep. So we're going to drop back down, and then again, we're going to do one of those wider turns. And now we're going to head up into the mid-course brake run. So we have it there. We're going to go up to 20 feet. And we're going to start our bank. And then we're going to go one more, and then we're going to use the wide turns. Again, love these pieces that the OpenRCT2 devs have been adding, because they add so much more to the ride. Because doing this as compared to doing this, it just looks that much smoother in the long run. It looks so smooth. So we're going to go up to 80 feet, and this is where our mid-course brake run is going to be. So we're going to level off right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a set of brakes. We'll have one. I'm going to put a mag brake here. Again, not going to do anything. We're going to do 2 more brakes that don't do anything. The third one, however, is going to slow it down to 22. And then we're going to have a space. This one's going to slow it to 18. And then we'll have a block brake here set to 18. If you have a train go into a block brake at too much speed, the block brake will not be able to catch it. So you kind of want to slow it down before it hits that block. Then, as I said before, what I'm going to do real quick is use the tile inspector. I'm going to hide. Oops, not that piece. We want to go right here for that piece. We're going to hide this piece right here. Make it invisible. We're going to copy over one of the booster pieces. And then it's not actually going to have an effect on the layout. However, it will just be there for looks. And we're going to raise it up to that 80 feet. And now I have a mag brake heading into the friction brakes. Now beyond that, we have the trench already dug out, so we're going to drop down underneath City Waterworks, the log flume. And I think the interaction that this ride gets with the log flume actually looks really awesome. I think this turned out really well. We're going to go into one more hill. It goes up to 60. We're going to drop back down to 20 at the shallow angle. Have 2 pieces to make the valley, and then we are heading up into that 55, and that will end our layout for Trailblazer. So that's what it looks like. Scenery free, custom support free, outside of the transfer track. Station's not done yet, but that is your layout, and we will go ahead and head on over into the fitting out process. All right, and getting started by fitting out, we're going to start work on the station. And I apologize, I may be just a little bit off on this recording, just because it's been a while since this ride was actually built. Actually, at the beginning, I mentioned that this ride might make an appearance in the decade breakdown video, and that's actually done and is scheduled to go up today at 10, this being the 13th. And it's really early in the morning, so I might make a few little mistakes. But as you can see, we started work on the base of the station, modified the land under it. And as you can see, we have a lot of ground marked. And the reason that is all marked, and I think it actually ended up working pretty well, this is the first coaster in the series that is full custom supported. And originally, and I've mentioned before, that I really like the look of the in-game supports, and that stays true. However, the further in you get to the modern era, and especially the 2010s are going to be a prime example of it, custom supports, especially for these big B&M coasters and any of the big coasters you build, are going to start to have to become the standard, just because the in-game supports are very, very thin, and they look kind of funky on these huge 200-foot coasters. And even these custom supports, when you get into the 300, 400-foot range, don't, even like the 250 range, look very, very thin in comparison to, I think, what they should look like. I wish there was a custom scenery that was a little bit, that had supports that were a little bit thicker, that have like the same angle idea. And if you have a reference to some custom supports that are a little bit thicker that would maybe fit for some larger coasters, please let me know about it, because I'd really like to have some for some future projects. But this being the first custom supported coaster, getting the lift hill supports done and then getting the lift catwalk in place, ends up looking really nice, I think. And then this used to be a very tedious process. It still kind of is. However, I did find a little bit of a handy trick. If you use the control key and the tile inspector, you can select the object that you want, and you don't have to, I don't have to play the guessing game with the ground anymore, which is very, very nice. I think I may have mentioned that in the live com, but again, I apologize. It's been a while since I've done the live com. But yeah, getting this was way easier doing this, and it made it a much quicker process. So this isn't nearly as tedious as it used to be. And then again, I can't argue with the final results, especially as somebody who likes to use more vanilla stuff if I can. Yeah, the lift for this ride ends up looking pretty good. The only thing I could maybe say as a quote-unquote complaint for this is the fact that I put catwalk railings on both sides. With the newer B&M Hypercoasters, the catwalk is only on one side for the most part. I could be wrong. I think some of the newer coasters maybe started to bring it back. I want to say Candymonium has it on both sides, but I think I'm wrong there. I know a ride like Mako has it on one, but the staggered seating B&M Hypers have the catwalk only on one side. Behemoth, Diamondback, Intimidator, and Shambhala, all the catwalks are only on one side of the lift, and I think it's usually the right side, if I'm not mistaken. I just uploaded an image to this project to Diamondback, and I'm pretty sure the catwalk's on the right-hand side. But either way, ends up looking pretty darn good there, and we're going to go ahead and get like kind of the lift motor piece placed there. But beyond that, a lot of custom support work needed to be done for this one. Again, marking where the footers go made this a much, much easier process. I've put a post out not too long ago for a set of custom supports I did. And I meant it in jest, and I probably could have put a little notation at the end that made it seem like it was a little more in jest. But it was not the most fun process to do it. And that ride is actually meant for the Fun Corp series as well. So if you want to throw some guesses out on where that one's going to end up, feel free to go ahead and do that. Or don't. Up to you guys. But yeah, it can be a not fun process. It just takes a long, long time. But at the end of the day, I think it's a night and day difference in terms of results for a lot of these bigger coasters. For a ride like Xenon TLS, that's also featured at this park, I don't think the custom supports mean a whole lot, just because that ride's only like 130 feet tall. Whereas a ride like this is in the 200 range. I think it ends up being 200 feet exactly. But yeah, it's a night and day difference when it comes to these custom supports for these big hyper coasters and for a lot of the bigger rides. Even I did a little bit of work on an invert as kind of a test, and it just looks beautiful. It's a long, long process, but the final result is just, it looks unbelievably good. So if you're kind of in the camp, and I was in this camp for a long time where I just wasn't sure if custom supports are really going to be my cup of tea. But at the end of the day, it just they look that much better. And if you notice here, I took some inspiration and I looked at a lot of pictures of the staggered seat B&M Hypers to draw inspiration for some of the supports on these rides. And if you look at them, there are a lot of the supports angle out, but there are some that just go vertically and just are one solid pole. I mean, there's connectors up there so you could ship it easier, but it's just a vertical member, which is kind of funny to look at. I mentioned that in the Yeti Trail video with the B&M dive coasters on that turn. Tormenta is just like, it has a comically big vertical support member that just makes me smile whenever I see it, because it looks kind of ridiculous. But at the end of the day, it serves its purpose. And I think it's interesting because if you watch, I'm really excited to watch Tormenta run in the future, because I should be there some point soon at Over Texas. But watching when a train crests over that, watching that support vibrate and like wiggle back and forth, kind of amusing. But speaking of custom supports and gripes I have with it, especially with these ones, and I think it's just an issue with this game. And I'm sure I'll mention it multiple times just because I have a lot of custom support rides to build. I mean, we're only heading into the 2010 season. This is the start of the decade for the Fun Corp, and there's plenty of coasters left to be built. But it would be much easier, and there was someone who left a comment in the post I made, kind of in jest, for custom supports, where they're a lot easier in RCT3 and Planet Coaster. And I could see that, especially with Planet Coaster, because there's a lot of stuff you can do to make custom supports. I just don't have the patience to build coasters in Planet Coaster 2. Maybe someday I'll give it a shot, but I am a real stickler for realism. And I've done Planet Coaster Parks before. I haven't played much Planet Coaster 2. In fact, I've only had that game booted up for probably like a half hour just before when it first came out and I bought it. But Planet Coaster 1, the coaster builder was not horribly smooth, and like if I watch coaster POVs and I watch the train shift through, I just can't stand watching the train shuffle at all, especially with the modern coasters. With like the arrows, no big deal, but with the modern coasters, they need to be smooth, and that's something that I tend to struggle with in Planco. So hopefully someday I'll get good at it, and maybe it's just going to take practice and plenty of time. But with Roller Coaster Tycoon, it's just much easier to kind of build a realistic coaster knowing the limits of the game. I mean, you look at that turn right there in the upper left with the banking before it hits the turn, but I mean, you can pretend that that's a smooth turn in game just because that's, the limitations of RCT2, and I just love the simplicity of this game as well. And the coaster builder, is just so simple as well. But anyway, back to what I was talking about with custom supports. You can angle you see the angled members again in that same turn in the upper left. You can angle those to kind of wherever you want. And the problem I tend to have with these supports, and this ride's not a horribly big issue with it. I think I ended up placing the supports pretty well for this one, but I have another couple coasters that'll be coming out that they angle and then they go vertical, which I don't like. It just doesn't fit, and it looks kind of funky. So that's an issue I have with doing custom supports in this game. And again, huge stickler for perfection. Everything has to look good. And when you have those vertical members attached to the angled ones, it just doesn't look quite right. And there's going to be some cases where you kind of have to do it. And I'm sure there are cases in real life where they've had to do it too, just to make sure things fit. But when you have that, if you're building a real ride, or if you're in Planco, and even to an extent, I think RCT3, you can angle those supports so they're not, terribly. So you can angle the supports so they go into the footer at the angle, as opposed to angling at a specific degree and then, we're just out of space. Because the custom supports in this game don't necessarily fit very well, because I always want them to sit on a footer, and then there's just a kind of a gap you have to work with. And with these rides, it's just the way it goes. But at the end of the day, this one, Trailblazer, ends up looking phenomenal. I think all the custom supports with this ride turned out pretty darn good. And I think for the next one, they all turned out pretty darn good. But as I said, there's an invert that might be coming out here pretty soon that I have to do a little bit of playing around with the custom supports, and there's some that just don't look great. And it's funny me saying that, and I'm sure there's some people that are going to watch this and then notice exactly what I'm talking about, but the majority probably won't even have any clue what I'm speaking about, which is the funny thing. But, as I've said, stickler for perfection. It is what it is. Now working on the custom supports for the turnaround here, and I think these turned out pretty good. I love the way this ride follows Houston Comet's layout on the outside, and it has a little bit of space, which is kind of nice as well. So it's not hugging the ride. There were a couple layouts I did for this ride where it literally hugs the ride. Hugs Houston Comet. I didn't really want that. I wanted to leave a little bit of space because I wanted Comet to kind of have its own, spacing, and then so it doesn't look horribly cramped in that particular spot. But then we're doing a little bit of restricted area fence here as the custom supports are finished up. Huge underrated touch. If you're looking to build a realistic park, make sure if your coaster gets within 5 feet of the ground, even 10 feet would probably be a good idea. Put some restricted area fence around. You don't want your, if a guest leaves the pathway, or if you have maintenance team going around out there, you don't want them getting into your restricted areas. Because if they get hit, and there's quite a few documented incidents of people getting hit by coasters, and it's not a good result. So make sure you have your restricted area fence. Make sure your fake maintenance team is doing the right thing and being safe. But then just kind of building some dirt paths where it looks like maybe equipment can kind of get around and get through to these restricted areas. Always also kind of helpful, and especially with a ride that's brand new like this. You're going to have a lot of construction, not a lot of trees in the area because you probably ripped them all down and get the track and then everything in there, all the equipment through. And then eventually I'll probably end up adding some trees back in just so it looks like it's starting to overgrow a little bit. But when you have a brand new ride like this, probably a good idea to let the overgrow kind of go in there. And then it gives you something to look at when I do the compilations. It's always kind of fun when I get the re-recording done and you can see what around the ride has changed. But now moving on to the station. Again, this is going to be a very, very plain station, and there's a reason for that. I mean, this ride just ends up being a huge box, kind of designed to look like a warehouse, which I think looks pretty good for the purpose it's trying to serve. I apologize if you hear some plates and dishes moving around. There's some stuff going on upstairs. But I'm modifying the land a little bit, getting that dirt path connected there, and then we're building the station to kind of look like a warehouse, and there's a reason for that. And we'll get there, and I'll explain it when we get there. But now it's kind of getting the queue all set up and getting the exit path all set up, which unfortunately I'm probably going to have to end up changing here pretty soon. And that'll be a teaser for probably the 2011 season, because I've got some plans. But now working on some just shade structures, so when guests are queuing, I mean, we're in Cypress, Texas, which is near Houston, and in the summer, believe it or not, that place gets very, very hot. So you don't want your guests standing around in the heat for hours at a time. So we'll get that done, and then we're going to go back to the station and work it a little bit. I kind of go back and forth a little bit just because I come up with new ideas and I want to expand them to other portions. I just want to use the ideas I have before they disappear. But we end up putting a sign up there for Warehouse 3, and then we're going to keep working on our queue and exit path here, and then move back over. Now what I'm doing here with those footers, because they're on a path where equipment will go, I'm marking the footers as yellow as something to kind of, so the maintenance guys can be careful of when they're going through and moving equipment through there. Back to the queue, getting some more overflow set up, getting the base of a building set up here. And the reason we're kind of theming the station building the way we are and being very plain is because the entrance to the ride is going to be a little bit more detailed. So the entrance of this ride is supposed to be like the main entrance to like an auto body shop, or maybe like you go get your car serviced or something like that. And that is kind of the inspiration that this front building is taking a look at. So the building itself here is going to be a lot nicer, but the further in you get, that's where they're taking the cars to actually go work on them, and that's where the station's going to end up being. So this building should look fairly nice. Again, very, very square, but most buildings like this are, so I'm not too worried about it. Getting the exit path set up, little gift shop, and I end up actually making that like the little break room, so when you take your car to go get work done, they have like the little rest area. So while the mechanics are dealing with your car, you can kind of just chill. I don't know, watch YouTube, watch stuff on your phone. Maybe you're watching this video while your car's getting work done. Probably not, though. But it's just something you could do. Again, getting those QTVs, getting the shade structures all set up. But then we're going to go ahead and get kicked off on getting this building done. Doing black for the base, and then getting the inside set up with sand, just so it looks like there's foundation underneath the building. Do you have to do this? No, I just think it's a nice little quality of life thing. I think it was actually Fluxtrance I saw do that for the first time. I think I've mentioned that before, but huge shout out to him. I take a lot of inspiration from Flux Park for some of this stuff, but I think it ends up looking pretty nice, and I love the way Fluxtrance did the foundation there. If wherever Fluxtrance is, I don't know if he does YouTube anymore, but hope he's having a good day. But getting some windows set up, getting the building set up. It took a couple tries to get something I liked. The city building, that didn't end up working too well for me, so I ended up just doing like this brick facade, which I thought ended up looking pretty good. But beyond that, getting everything set up on the inside here, getting the t-shirt stall, getting the hat stall. I think it was hats. No, it was balloons. So it'll be hats and balloons when we get there. But then I was going to do an angled roof here. Didn't like it, so I just decided to do a flat roof. And, you know, driving around a city anymore, this is all it is. All the buildings made these days are so cheap anymore, so I think it ends up looking fine for what it's supposed to be emulating. But balloons, great piece of merchandise to sell, because guests will buy balloons and either leave and you get new guests coming in to buy them, or they let go of them. And then you can get that same guest to buy multiple balloons throughout the day. And it's also kind of fun if you place them at your major coaster exits. You can see where guests have been and what rides they've enjoyed, because if they didn't have a good time, they wouldn't be buying a balloon. Now just kind of modifying the maintenance paths I had, because this new area is going to take up a lot of the area near the maintenance shop. And with that, we're going to have to build some buildings to kind of try to hide it behind everything, because you really don't want your maintenance shops visible. I mean, it's not the end of the world if they are, but I prefer not to have my maintenance buildings visible by guests, because there's obviously going to be some, you know, ride vehicles taken apart, some parts just floating around out there, golf carts everywhere that just aren't going to look horribly appealing to guests that are visiting, and it's going to look kind of trashy. So I'm going to do my best to hide that behind this building here, which I end up making look kind of like a strip mall. But I mean, obviously guests are going to be able to see it from the queue of Trailblazer, but I mean, it's is what it is at that point. And then we're going to hide this stuff from view of guests. So we're going to put these buildings in here, and then somewhere in here there's going to be a little bit of a cut, because I get these started, and it's going to be later in the video, but I get these started. Then what I do is, there was an issue with the brakes on Trailblazer I tried to fix, and I ended up hitting save, or I thought I saved it and I didn't, and I went to load it again, so where we were, and this is we ended up going back to exactly what these buildings look like here. So I did a lot of work that didn't even end up sticking, but this stuff all did. So we get the lake going in here just to kind of give this blank space filled, and I think it ends up looking pretty good. Probably could have done some texture underneath the water, but I didn't. Oh well. But a little bit of a man-made lake, couple trees in that area. Then we're going to move back over to Trailblazer here, place a couple more signs in, and get that all set. But either way, here comes the cut right about here. And then, so again, what happened was I went to play with the brakes, forgot to save, had to roll back to my closest autosave, so luckily we weren't too far away from that. But anyway, gonna get a souvenir stall place there. And we're gonna do a food stand in this area too. A nice thing about doing a food stand near these rides is you get a big crowd of guests when they want something to eat. And then fun fact, and I didn't realize this until building the ride, I never put in like a burger place at this park. Like, this is the literally the first burger bar in the entire park, and this park is located in Texas. Like, that's not acceptable. Can't do that. So luckily we were able to get that fixed. Again, literally could not believe it. But, you know, either way, moving past it, we have it in there now. We ended up naming it Smash. So they sell smash burgers there. Pretty darn good. But, you know, usually just generic theme park food at these places. And then getting the souvenir stall covered back up. And then we're going to move on over to the sunglasses stall, which we're going to get placed. And then what we can also do is, you saw me kind of pan over, there's another sunglasses stall in the downtown area, which heading into 2011, I'll probably either remove fully or I'll find something else to plop there. But after that, we got to get the staff all zoned in. Get the mechanics scheduled there. I ended up hiring a new one, and then what I do for my coasters, if you haven't seen it before, is each coaster has its own dedicated mechanic, so that if it breaks down, it's ready to go again. And once our staff is zoned up, we want to go ahead and get some benches and trash cans placed around the area. Go ahead and get this all done. So, and then what I'm going to do once that's all done I originally was going to wrap this up right here, but I completely had forgotten that, you know, in this one we hadn't tested the ride. So we had to get the ride tested to get our excitement intensity rating and all that fun stuff back. Ended up getting a 7.80 excitement rating, which seemed kind of low for a ride like this to me, but, you know, it is what it is. But that should about wrap it up for this one, guys. Thank you all very, very much for tuning in to this hour-long special of RCT Construction for the B&M Hypercoaster over at Houston Pleasant. POV should be coming out on Friday, but that will wrap it up with a couple of details. Thank you all very much for tuning in, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.